To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the record, present with me here in the County Board Chambers at the Government Center are Greg Wright, Mr. Ravi Napindali, and Anthony Joseph. There are some people joining us online. We remind them that the meeting, keep their microphones muted unless they're speaking to prevent feedback and echo. We are having a public meeting tonight. We ask that each person who wishes to speak or ask a question to please use the hand on the icon to identify themselves. The public, but not the members of the PAC, may attend the meeting remotely by video, so please bear with us as we make adjustments to accommodate all attendees. If anyone experiences any technical difficulties, please ask for assistance. First order is to approve the agenda.
If there aren't any additions or subtractions, I will make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second the motion.
Okay, motion made by Greg, seconded by Robbie. All in favor of approving the amendment, say aye.
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 It approves. If y'all had a chance to read the minutes from last month's meeting, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last month or last meeting.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as printed.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of approving last meeting's minutes, say aye.
Aye.
That's approved. Okay, we're having a public hearing tonight for proposal 02-022-003 land use permit and 002 general development plan. I guess we could call the public hearing to order.
Usually we have somebody from the county, maybe Elliot wants to explain what they are first, if I would suggest. And then we'll open it up for comment.
Okay. Well, I guess with that said, Michael, would you make your presentation?
Yep. So I'm Elliot with Olmsted County Planning. I might be a little too loud, so we'll step away. But I'm here to give the presentation on 2022-003 LUPA and 2022-002 GDP by Michael Bassett. These will be presented at the same time, and you'll hold the public hearing at the same time. You'll just have to make separate motions for both applications, the loop being first. So as I said, Michael Bassett is the applicant. The property in question is located in the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of section 27 in Oronoco Township, on the corner of 18th Avenue Northwest, otherwise known as County Road 112, and 90th Street Northwest, otherwise known as County Road 121. On the screen before you right now is just the notification map that was also in the staff report. Minnesota statute requires a notification distance of at least half a mile, or 2,640 feet. With that, notifications are also required to be published at least 10 days prior to the public meeting. This includes being postmarked. And you can see there's a map of all applicable properties that were notified. The property right now is zoned A3 Agricultural District. You can see it on the right there, outlined in white, and site is labeled on it. The current land use is resource protection, potential suburban development. And right now, the applicant is asking you to change this on the land use plan map from resource protection potential suburban development to suburban development to eventually develop 12 residential single family lots. As you can see on the map on the right, the property is more or less surrounded with suburban development to the south and to the northeast. And just as a quick reminder, in the general land use plan, the potential suburban development area are lands that may be suitable for suburban development and that may eventually be developed. Next on the screen is floodplain. Floodplain soils are kind of an added measure that the county uses. So it's not necessarily deemed floodplain by FEMA, but we have this extra standard in the county. You can see on the site, right almost down the middle, that purple, that indicates that there's some there's floodplain soils on the property. So the property owner is going to have to, if they want to build on it, they'll have to apply for a conditional use permit. Looking at the general development plan, it looks like the road may intersect those soils. So we'll just keep an eye out on that and ensure that if anything is to be constructed, that they follow suit and apply for the appropriate permits. On the screen now is the general development plan. You can see that there's 12 lots, all approximately 2 acres with a road gaining access off 90th Street Northwest. At the northeast corner of the general development plan, you can see right here that they will be including an easement and the road will end in a what was supposed to be a temporary cul-de-sac of sorts, so that eventually, if the properties to the north and the northeast and the east ever were to develop, there would be adequate easement space for the road. So the cost would be more or less shared between the two property owners if there's any future development. You'll also see that there's a stormwater basin on the north side just to ease any drainage issues that may occur. This next slide is just to visualize what the general development plan would look like on the aerial. You can see that this road will be across from what is Miller Place, Miller Place right there, which gains access to the subdivision to the south. So this next slide is just a historical land use plan amendment review. On this table, I just had the most recent 5 that have been seen before the Planning Commission and the County Board. Currently, the Belter Trust property, which was 79 acres, which is located south of this property, was recently approved by the Planning Commission and subsequently the County Board. And the general development plan was approved by Oronoco Township last month. Currently, the only proposed development that our office knows about happening is that Belter Trust, and it's planned to be a phased development. Phase 1 has yet to be approved and the property still needs to be rezoned. So when looking at land use plan amendments, we make sure that we take into account the locational criteria that we have set out in the general land use plan, that those being proximity and access, site attractiveness, unsuitability for resource uses, development limitations, orderly development, and so on and so forth that you can see on the screen. This property in the clues model does appear to be well suited for suburban development because of its closeness to Rochester as well as other existing suburban development. There is tillable acreage on the property, so it's land that can be farmed, though we're seeing development pressures in this area. It also gains access off of 90th Street, and there's 18th Avenue there. It's a county road. Both of them are county roads. What could be seen as quick access to the city of Rochester. However, there are a lot of traffic concerns that we will go over in this slide. And Charlie Ryder, our transportation planner, is also on the call to answer any questions that you may have regarding that memo that he sent out into the staff report. So we also look at LUPA, our land use plan amendment findings of fact, basically just making sure that no mistakes were made in the data that we have, and none were. Any conditions of land use changing or land subdivision, like I said previously, the Belter Trust was approved. No, there hasn't been any plats or anything like that, but they are planning about 29 single-family lots that will lie in between 18th Avenue and 11th Avenue in Oronoco Township. Policies changing, as you may be aware, the general land use plan amendment or general land use plan will be updated in the coming months. And those will bring with it changes in policy. As always, there's not really an unanticipated shortage of land available in the county for suburban development. This property really does follow, though, the general land use plan that is adopted right now, in that it is compact development. It's developing where there exists development already. It's not out in some farm field in the middle of nowhere. It is more or less orderly. Referral comments. We always send out requests for referrals for different agencies, such as Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, Minnesota Department of Transportation, various county departments and city departments. For this specific application, we received responses from MnDOT regarding the traffic issues on 75th Street and 18th Avenue, as well as various departments, such as Public Works. And I will note that most often, if we don't receive a comment from an agency, we just take that as a no comment. However, sometimes we do follow up, such as this one, we followed up with MnDOT and County Public Works, as well as Olmsted County Soil and Water Conservation District, just mainly because of traffic issues. And we did receive some answers on 75th Street and 18th Avenue, and plans for potential roundabouts. It is slated for funding by the state in the year 2025. The county board is aware that there are potential avenues to make that happen faster. Various funding mechanisms. So on the screen now is a closed model, which is basically what we take, and it's not the end all be all, but it helps determine areas that are best suited for suburban development. On the screen is a masked closed model. Basically, it just excludes existing areas of suburban development and urban service area, as well as excluding properties that are less than 10 acres in size, since those are most likely not going to be split again. And it also excludes publicly owned lands. So as you can see, the site is highlighted in blue here. Dark purple scores of 110 to 132 are prime for suburban development. And mainly that scores because it's in between two suburban development subdivisions. So Charlie Ryder, as I said, gave us a transportation memo. I can just go through the main points on here. So trip generation, he found that overall estimated traffic level, given the limited development, which is 12 single-family lots, would be very low. With 70% of those trips occurring from Oronoco Township and the cities, townships south of it. And the biggest traffic impact would be to the south and or east. Road capacity development is expected to have little to no impact on traffic flow conditions that drivers experience on a day-to-day basis that aren't already present. And safety consideration, the development is slated to have about a 1% increase in traffic at that 75th Street, 18th Avenue intersection. With that, there's also 2 to 3 crashes per year. None have been fatal. And there's a caveat to that. That data that was used from the joint system between the Minnesota Department of Transportation and Minnesota Department of Public Safety. And that excludes any crashes that have no confirmed or potential injuries and for total damages of property of less than $1,000. So in crashes that fall into that category, they were not included in the analysis. And I'll open the floor to Charlie after I'm done with the presentation if you have any questions on that included. So the application process, what we're looking at is today going from resource protection potential suburban to suburban development, as well as approving or denying the general development plan, recommending approval or denial. After this, if it were to be approved, the applicant is looking at these next 3 steps. So concurrent Oronoco Township application for the general development plan to be approved by the township, zoning district amendment, and preliminary plat, as well as a final plat, and then Mylar is being sent to the county board for final approval. So with that, staff recommending approval of O 2022-003 LUPA and O 2022-002 GDP to the county board to redesignate approximately 34 acres from resource protection potential suburban development to suburban development on the Olmsted County land use map based on findings of fact within the staff report. So as the Planning Advisory Commission, you're tasked with holding the public hearing, and once it's closed, making a motion to recommend either approval, denial, or continuance of the application. I will note that with the continuance of the application, it would incur the 60-day rule, and we'd have to write a 60-day extension for the general development plan of the applicant. So with that, any questions? And I'll turn the floor to Charlie if you have any questions for.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, some questions?
Thank you, Elliot. Did all the fellow commissioners receive the traffic report?
I think Ben's got a question.
And
Can ask my
the comments
questions
that were
later.
received by the planning staff after the packet was posted?
Yep, I received those.
Okay, does any of the commissioners have any questions?
Yes, I asked questions. Elliot, we received some comments from other agencies. Was there any concerns any of those agencies offered?
No concerns were noted
No
by
concern?
MnDOT or Public Works.
All right. And the clues model, which you referred to, that, from my understanding for the general public, is a model that the county uses and to find out if it's appropriate for development.
Correct.
And it includes all of the other kinds of pathways and reserved areas that might be in it, made sure that it doesn't interfere with those. Is that
Correct. Yeah. So we like our acronyms. So it stands for Comprehensive Land Use Evaluation System, I believe.
Yeah, we use a lot of acronyms, sorry to the general public there, so.
But right, Commissioner, Wright, you're correct in that not only does it find suitable areas for suburban development, but it also finds suitable areas for natural areas that we should protect, resources throughout the county such as mining, prime farm fields, and the like.
Okay, thank you very much. And then my understanding of Charlie Rader's report is that this would not add significant traffic to the intersection that's in question at 18 and 75th Street.
Correct.
All right. And as Charlie pointed out, there are other routes that cars and traffic could take to get to Highway 52 or Highway 63 to the east.
Correct.
Right. Okay. And another question is that I think that you outlined very nicely what the process here, if it does pass here, then it still has to go back to the township. The township still has a whole bunch of things that they would have to approve. Finally, it comes back to us. So what's your general idea of a timeline before actual people might be in a house in this area?
If I had to speculate, sooner than next year, getting people in homes, the applicant would be lucky to get the entire process done this year.
So maybe 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, depending on.
I think there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah,
but
I think the point that I want to make, it isn't going to be done next week. They're not adding people very rapidly. It'd take quite a while, but the developers are here. They might give us a better idea of how long that might take. So I'm done with my questions.
I think I was initially taken back by all of this, and I have some other permits or applications have voiced similar concerns. And obviously, whether we have a fatality or not, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't really hold any water. It's what potentially could happen. But as I was digesting this, I was more concerned about it's not so much this land development plan. It sounds like we have a bigger issue from a traffic standpoint. It's not so much the development. It sounds like, from what is our charge, and our charge is to approve this land development. However, I am concerned as a as a citizen of the county about these, potential and, some of these have been witnessed issues. And I think that from moving forward at some point, they're either it's a reduction in speed or whatever, something needs to be looked at. But our charge, unfortunately, is to approve the land in its, or not approve, excuse me, thank you, or continue it. But I had to separate myself because I was a little taken back by all of this. So that being said, I understand where the public is coming from because obviously,
Yeah.
that's a big issue.
Right. So, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead. Sorry.
the good news and the bad news about county roads is we build very good roads. And that people think that because they're very good roads that they can speed. So that's the bad thing. So we could build crappy roads and that would slow them down. The difficulty is that that's not our job to do that. It's the public's responsibility to observe the traffic laws, not be passing on the right, which is illegal, not to be cutting in front of people, but controlling people and their personal behavior is very difficult to do. But if a traffic study, and they just completed a traffic study not too long ago, I mean, that's up to the state because 63 is a state road and that would be up to them to reduce the speed on that road. And whether the speed was reduced or not would not necessarily change people's behavior. That's part of the difficulty. And when the government acts, whether it's us or the township, we rely on people being responsible and following the rules that are in place. So that's part of the difficulty that people in that area have. On the other hand, my guess is that some of the people in the audience built their house in this area because it is desirable. And because it's desirable, other people also want to build a house there. So that's part of the issue that we have. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I do have a quick question.
Melvin Collin.
Thank you. I know sometime back, there was a discussion about 18th Avenue and 75th Street, probably a potential roundabout might be coming in the year 2026. Subject to the approval of the funding and other stuff. But in case if there is a decision has been taken here, how long? I think the other commissioner already asked for it. It will take around 2 years time. Was there any other recommendations that from either MinDOT or County Public Works recommendation on how to control the traffic in the current scenario?
From MnDOT and County Public Works, nothing specific on traffic calming. After following up with them, their response was very much the same, that they are in serious talks with the county to get a roundabout in there by 2025. I think to both Commissioner Wright and Commissioner Joseph's points, the traffic concerns here are valid. And I think that's why both MnDOT and the county are looking at this closely. And so the response that we had gotten, our department, was 2025 is that the year that it would be funded. But again, the county board may or may not be able to push that forward if they wanted, if they could find the funding or not. So
Right.
It's up to the board. And that could be a conversation that
Right.
this happens at the public hearing at the county
Sure.
board. So
Yeah, and I know that Kate Beniak has looked at that, and she's talked to MnDOT about that. And we have another project, Highway 14, County 44, which we'd like to push forward. And as you know, the legislature didn't do anything. There's no money coming for anything. And we're talking to MnDOT about those things. But we're always happy to talk to MnDOT and push our concerns forward and get funding, because the county doesn't want to see accidents. Our transportation department, they don't want to see accidents. And so, you know, we respond to those as rapidly as we can. So part of it's dependent upon the state of Minnesota.
The commissioners have any other questions?
No.
Well, then at this time, I'd like to open the public meeting and ask the applicants to introduce themselves before they speak and to sign the sign-in sheet if they haven't already done so. So at this time, the public meeting is open.
I'm Michael Bassett. I'm developing this property. This is my engineer, Tim, with Stoneberg Engineering.
And your address, Mike?
What's that?
Your address?
2071 Wild Wings Pass, New Market, Minnesota. The one we just discussed. Corner 18 and 90. 34 acres. The 12 residential sites.
And as Mike said, I'm Tim Arvidsson with Stonebrook Engineering, 305 Stonebrook Court, Shakopee, Minnesota.
Yeah, we're just looking at developing the site. I think everything is gonna work out. I think we have a lot of positive feedback from the county, Oronoco Township. I think it's gonna be a good site. Have some top builders in the area looking at getting in there as well. So
I think Elliot did a great job of explaining the project. I mean, do you guys have questions for us or concerns?
Well, I was out there and looked at it the other day, and of course there aren't any, there's not, the proposed road has, nothing's been staked, you
Right.
know, nothing's there. So approximately how, after approval, which I don't know how long that's gonna take, because you have to go back to Oronoco. How long does it take to put the roads in? And
Yeah, it kind of depends. Things have been a little slower just because contractors are busy and harder to find and things are more expensive. Typically it goes fairly quickly. I mean, from when we get done and approval on this thing, it's probably going to be into the fall. It'd be hard pressed to get anything done this fall, but starting next spring, you know, when road restrictions and stuff are off, and probably April or so, it will take a few months, you know, so probably mid-summer, you know, June, July, August, or timeframe.
I'd say late August.
Yeah.
At the earliest.
Yeah.
And that's not houses, that's the site.
well, you know, and then I looked at the development that's south of that. The roads were in quite a while before they even started to build a house, obviously.
Right.
And the houses appear to be going, in my estimation, slowly. And I don't know if that's materials or what's going on.
Part of
with
that, sir. Yeah.
But my guess is that that's not necessarily going to slow down. The reason why I'm asking is because of the concern that people would have about adding more cars to the driveway. But what I'm gathering is that it's going to be a while before actually people are in the house.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we used to say you could build a house in, you know, 90 days. We're seeing, you know, more like 120 to 180 on average. Now things are quite a bit slower than they were. So that's, yeah, 6 months out from starting a house to moving into a house. Plus we've got, you know, a year between design and construction to even get the roads in. So but it's out a little.
I'd say 2 years conservatively from where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And this is for 12 lots, right? So do you build all 12 at the same time?
We don't build houses, sir. We just sell dirt.
Okay, So you sell them, somebody else would buy, so.
Correct.
It's possible.
I
that-
have one builder in the Rochester
Right.
area that wants the whole development, so. I don't
Okay,
know.
well then, yeah.
So.
Likely not 12 all at the same time.
Likely not 12.
No.
Okay.
In our covenants, I was actually talking to one of the lovely neighbors earlier today. Our covenants create beautiful homes, nice pitches on the roof, good size homes. You're not gonna have someone walk in and build a pole barn and live out of it by any means. So everything that we do with our developments is nice. So it's not gonna devalue anybody's property.
Appreciate that. That'll be between you and Oronoco.
I said it for the background, to be
Yeah,
honest with you.
appreciate that. Thank you.
I've actually built over 1,000 homes, so I'm not a stranger to what I'm doing, and it's not gonna be an eyesore by any means, so. But we're not building anything, we're just selling the ground, so.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You bet.
So thank both you gentlemen.
Any questions for us?
I think we've got everything in here.
Who's the builder? The builder that you mentioned, you had a builder that was.
I've got a list of 40 builders. No one's signed up, no one's.
You said one wants the whole thing. Who is that one?
I talked to these guys 9 months ago.
And one guy can answer that, and you don't.
Yeah.
That's just demonstrating interest. So it's just made up.
Just that it's so sacrosanct.
Right.
You can't come up with a name.
Right. So.
No, there's 40.
And then you fire up and build houses, but you do build.
Say, everybody, just to keep the meeting orderly, we need people to come up one at a time and sign in and speak at the microphone, please.
I'm happy to talk to you after this if you'd like.
Thank you.
So thank you, gentlemen.
Comments? Yeah, we may have more questions, so don't leave.
We're not running from anything, trust me.
You can add my name.
Add it to you.
I'm sorry.
Add it here, just let you know.
Below your name. I'll speak after you.
I just have one question is,
Could you introduce yourself, please?
my name is Steve Ferletti, and I own the land on the east side of this. And when you mentioned that there were no fatalities at this intersection, that is incorrect. Bernie Bunning's father or son-in-law, excuse me, Bernie Bunning's wife her brother was killed at this intersection.
How long?
So there is a concern.
How long was it this ago, sir?
I'm gonna guess 2005. But I just question
Sure.
how true the rest of these studies are if these are not the real facts. So
So this is Charlie Ryder from the Planning Department who prepared the Transportation Memo. That memo, we looked through a little over 11 years through 2013 to basically through the end of March of this year. So a little over 11 years. And during that time period, there were no fatalities and also no crashes with serious injuries. And that is at the 18th Avenue and Highway 63 intersection. So I'm not sure if the gentleman was referring to that intersection or the intersection here at 90th and 18th.
it's on 90th and 75th. Or, excuse me, it's on 75th and 18th Avenue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think if you didn't hear Charlie, what he was saying is a study that we were talking about here at the meeting went back to 2013.
And actually there've been more houses and more traffic counts since that time, so the condition has gotten worse. But the fact is, people have been killed at that intersection.
Thank you for the information.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Janelle Rosine,
And I live at 1475 90th Street Northwest. We own the 10 acres directly east of Mr. Bassett's proposed property. Mr. Bassett, I know it may appear that our biggest concern is that you're developing the field to the west of us. We've lived there for 20 years. We knew in due time that that was likely to happen. I do work for the city and county, and my serious concerns do, of course, we would love for that field to stay empty. I understand that's not realistic. Property develops. My genuine concern and what I'll lay out to the board is the traffic patterns that have changed in the last 20 years that we've been here. And the concern isn't directly just with you developing, it's that we've been asking for a roundabout or something to be done at this intersection for a minimum of the last 6 years. And for lack of a better way of labeling it, I have been told more than once that it's really a battle of budgets between the state and county, because west of 18th Avenue is state and east of it is county. And so it's become, their words to use that probably aren't appropriate. It's become a match of wills and who is going to pay for this and who's going to step up first. Unfortunately, your development and the Bolter one are kind of, a lot of people are feeling like they're just being swept under the rug underneath the general area without much notice or cause for concern for general safety of the people that will eventually live in this development as well. I believe Mr. Bassett, when he says, you know, we're not going to have homes on the west side of my property in the next year. That's not my concern. My concern is, even if it's 2 years and there's 12 more homes there, there's more homes being built up in Providence, there's a projection for Thunder Bluff, then there's the Bolter property. Even if those aren't all completed for 2 to 3 years, we still have no plan for a minimum of 3 to 4 years. And that's not even a true commitment for the city or for the county and the state to address this huge concern of traffic. And when you brought up Highway 14 and 50th or 60th Avenue, that's a terrible, terrible intersection. And I do work in dispatch, and I know that that one is worse than what we're talking about. If the state or county aren't willing to get together to deal with that one, why should we think that anything's going to happen for 63, 75th, 18th Avenue by 2025, 2026? And as Mr. Joseph said, do we have to wait for multiple deaths as happened at 75th Street and 63 before the county and the state, again, because that's another intersection, finally said, okay, we're going to have to do something about this? I know I sent it in and I'm not sure how the information is dispersed, but one question, the traffic study that was done just recently, was that done during COVID if it was done in the last couple of years? Because clearly traffic has been significantly down in the last couple of years. I know at least 3 people sitting out there right now that are now permanently working from home. You know, that's 3 homes out of hundreds. The other question or comment I had to do with that is, to kind of back up what I sent to the web address, is many times a day throughout our city and county, when people are in accidents, we tell them, if there are no injuries, you just need to exchange information and turn it into your respective insurance companies. So the accuracy of any accident counts, any place in our county or state, really, because it's a state legislation, is not going to be accurate for non-injury accidents. I can tell you in the last year, I've witnessed non-injury accidents on my way to work multiple times or on my way home at that intersection that didn't maybe even, they didn't result because I'd get to work and look it up and go, oh, they must have decided to exchange names and information. One of my coworkers, when I was discussing it today, happens to be a Byron first responder with family that lives out by us. He said it was in the last 2 years that I witnessed a very significant accident at that intersection and was able to help. And the other thing that comes into play here, because it's a city and county, and because those highways and avenues and county roads were all just labeled, even if you asked someone to search, it's hard to explain how we do it, but state would be the same way. 2 years ago, 75th Street was 63 out, or 63 was 75th Street all the way. So if I were to try and search how accidents were put in and try and kind of come up with a realistic data point, it's like shades of brown. It's not, unless there's injuries reported to the state, it's not going to be accurate. Every day there are near misses there. I would put my next paycheck on that. I sat there this morning for 10 minutes. I left early for work. There were 2 large trucks from Sargent's. I was headed southbound. There's no right turn lane to go westbound on 75th. I had 2 large Sargent's trucks. I watched both of them gun it to go east with large quarry trucks coming westbound. Between 7 and 9, that's pretty much what you see. So again, we've seen a lot of development in these couple of sections the last couple of years, smaller ones, like at the corner of 11th Avenue and 85th and up in Providence. That's fine. I mean, whoever said we all enjoy living in the country, other people want to. I'm not here to deny other people what I have. I'm here to say the township and the county seem to be just, little pieces here and there. Unfortunately, this particular development was the one that came up on our radar, and we're seeing a bigger picture that it feels like no one's doing anything or seeing the forest for the trees. As far as the actual development, it still is surrounded by large farmland, and I believe Forletti's have 90 acres that are on a, what is you have a, like a CRP or?
Oh, it's in the, it's the A3 one.
Right. And our 10 acres wasn't on there because we just recently added. So that 10 acres has been designated incorrectly. So when to say it is mostly subdivisions around it, that's not true. It's just something I'd like to point out. I don't know that it would change anything. Also, when this was advertised, it was advertised as possibly being divided into 2 parcels. And that was back in April.
That is correct. That is correct.
I have a picture if you'd like to see it. Right. Additionally, we know from watching Mr. Nelson Farm, there's a spring on that property because there's one on ours too. And our question is, how does that affect water tables, runoff to the river? As I sent in an email that neighbors down the road had to put in a culvert that I could walk through with my arms up because of watershed to the river. And it does slope from our properties all the way down. If we're putting an additional 12 houses in, what is that doing for water tables and runoff to the river? especially if there's a spring on there. And the packet that we were sent actually talks about, trying to think of the word, where the land can cave in. I'm just, thank you, sinkhole. Interestingly enough, and again, I understand it's 2 years out for this property, Bolter property could be the same, but in the packet that I was sent, it actually says that this is the 10th highest crash rating among the 50 intersections studied, and it exceeds the critical crash rate for the intersection. I mean, this is what the planning department sent out. And how many more developments will be approved before anything is done at that intersection? And husband told me, well, he wasn't really respectful, but the idea that the county thinks that we might need to go down 11th Avenue to get on 75th Street if we're going eastbound is worse, because there's the curve there. It's worse to turn eastbound at the suggestion that's been given to us to avoid 75th and 18th. So I'm sorry if it was disrespectful to say it's laughable, but it's not realistic. And again, I'm not sure what information you were giving, but people in River Ridge don't take 11th Avenue, even though it's the shortest route. They come all the way over to 18th to go eastbound because of the difficulty of getting on the 75th. So I'm just saying it's not indicative of what's actually going on. A couple questions I had with the comments that were made with the presentation. I guess I go back to more or less surrounded by a subdivision. This property, and this is getting away from the traffic concerns, this property is not currently more or less surrounded by a subdivision. The south side has a subdivision and a 5-acre parcel. The east side has a 10-acre parcel, a 90-acre parcel. The north side has a 40-acre parcel that we've been told would not be developed easily because of the floodplain, yet the reason that they're requesting having a cul-de-sac in the corner is we've been told that ideally a road would go all the way north up to like Satry, and what's the one you turn to go to? White Bridge. Yeah. So there are a lot of discrepancies about what we're being given for information. It can't be or wouldn't likely be developed because of floodplains. No, let's put this road in with the idea that it would be developed. You know, DNR, have they even looked at this? I know that Ferletti's had a lot to go through to put a pond on their property to add water by a spring. So the idea that a spring might be removed or excavated over for a larger development versus the 2 parcels that was originally advertised is questionable to us. And there, I guess just talking, the other thing is I've been told that with the Bolter development, the only entrance and access, even though it will go, the development phase 1 and phase 2 will go from the west side on 18th Avenue all the way to the east side to 11th Avenue. They will not have access to the development on the gravel of 11th Avenue because the sight lines will not be good for people to go in and out of the development. So eventually phase 1 and phase 2 will dump out onto 18th Avenue as well. And this is direct from the county. So even if the Bolter development isn't completed for 2 to 3 years, we're looking at anywhere from between this multitude of only the 3 we know, at least 60, 70 more houses within a 2-mile stretch of 18th Avenue going to 75th Street. So this is our overall concern. There's been multiple houses added in River Ridge. There's been multiple up in Providence. There are proposals for Thunder Bluff, and I don't know where Cascade and Oronoco and everyone end, but we're looking at one little one right here, when really there, it feels like there needs to be a bigger picture and a bigger plan if the state and the county are butting heads about budgets and who's going to make the first move.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have some questions. Elliot, can you address some of those concerns?
Yep.
You know, and just redefine what you mean by surrounded by,
Yeah,
you know?
I can clarify.
And then, can you also answer the question, was the public meeting properly notified with the correct information regardless of what's been sent out in the past?
Yes, I can. So if I did say surrounded and I misspoke, and I apologize, the property to the south, although there is a 5-acre egg parcel, the remaining is the, I believe, River Ridge subdivision. Yeah. So that right there, you can see the northwest on 90th Street, or the southeast corner of 90th Street, and 18th is that green right here. This is that egg parcel, that's 5 acres we're talking about. Here is that subdivision. This is all ARC, which is agricultural, or it's just meant to be a cluster subdivision more or less. This is Thunder Bluff. And so when I mean that it's surrounded by suburban development is what I mean is the land use. So it's slated to eventually possibly become suburban development if the property owners so choose to either develop themselves or sell it to a developer. With regards to the road, so Public Works made a couple comments. The first being that the property owner has to give some of the property that the frontage of 90th Street to the county for right of way, just for a turn lane to be added in potentially in the future. And then this proposed curvilinear road that ends in a cul-de-sac was also a Public Works comment to eventually, if any development occurs to the north, northeast, or east, to the developability, that's a word, of that property you mentioned. At this time, I'd have to go back and look and give you more information, just because right now we're looking at this site, and it's purely from a land use perspective that we have the general land use plan. And I apologize, I'm forgetting, I think, a couple of questions that you had asked.
Could you go back to the floodplain slide with the purple?
Mhm.
Our understanding is that it would be very difficult to develop a lot of what Mr. Ferletti owns and what is north of the current site under question. If I'm reading and what I've looked into with regard to floodplains and development. I was told that for unknown reasons to us, that only east of 18th Avenue is being considered for more suburban development, but not the west side. And I might point out as well that just where it says 112 on that slide, and then there's a property line for Wass's there. Right on the other side of that property line is a huge DNR wildlife property that's been, pardon me?
Are you talking about
Prairie,
the Oronoco
prairie
Township?
restoration, that's what I'm looking
Yeah.
for.
And that's
Prairie
on-
restoration,
That's on the west side.
right, but it's still in proximity to this urban small, whoops, sorry, that's going north through flood area, or what would be considered flood plains. Additionally, to the west is the, not very far west, is the landfill. I don't know, I guess I question why there have been proposals to develop on the west side, as close as down by Sargent's, which have no purple, directly across the road. And this is irregardless of the traffic. This is another question of what's happening here when we're looking to develop the sites that have been designated as floodplains, but not the west side. And again, it just feels a little bit like we're smoke and mirrors, being told yes to one and no to the other without, but given information that says this wouldn't be the most suitable place to develop in the township or county. There was one thing that I forgot when I was here a second ago that I want to find.
Can you give Elliot a chance to answer your
Yeah, so,
east side, west side issue?
yeah, so we have the floodplain administrator on the call. So Christie, if I am not accurately describing this, please jump in. But what is shown on this map is what we call floodplain soils, which is different than FEMA designated floodplain. So with FEMA floodplains, there's a lot more restrictions. In the case of just these floodplain soils, the county, it's an extra measure for us to make sure that we're grading appropriately and we're controlling for erosion. And so in the ordinance, anywhere that a floodplain soil exists, such as this one, we would require a conditional use permit so that proper conditions could be placed on that property owner so that they develop in a manner that uses best management practices to fight erosion and such.
What's the red?
Yeah, so the difference between red, purple, and green are the severity. So I think red is low, purple moderate, green high.
The other note I had made on page 5 of that larger packet is this property could be considered as an infill development. It meets the goals of the general land use. In my reading, infill development is to be environmentally and socially sustainable, reducing conversion of agricultural land, sensitive habitat, and open space for new development, reducing water runoff to already established waterways, and are congruent with the current infrastructure. I mean, there's several red flags right there, especially with the back to the infrastructure. And again, unfortunately, this is one little proposal, but at what point do we stop saying no? We've already done Providence, we've done River Ridge, they've added to River Ridge. There's been 3 homes put in at the corner of 11th Avenue and 85th Street in the last few years. And again, I guess I go back to, I'm jumping around here. If the traffic assessment was done in the last 2 years, I don't think that it would be indicative of traffic patterns in general. I think that's it for questions, other than the questions I listed in the email I sent, which again, I'm not sure how that was dispersed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elliot, do you have a response?
Yeah.
Last question?
So again, I apologize for the info comment. I misused that term. Shouldn't have made it into the final staff report. Mainly, I was just trying to get at that it is adjacent to existing suburban development. Your questions about the developments or development in general occurring on the west side of 18th Avenue. I really can't speak to whether and why developers aren't wanting to go on that side. Either they don't want to, property owners don't want to sell, maybe because the landfill, those property owners don't think that they can sell. I know you said there's a prairie restoration directly west of this property. And then if you can see on this image, okay, it's really hard, but there are some gray spots in the southwest and the northwest. And so those areas are urban service areas. And so those are properties that are expected to be annexed within the city limits of Rochester, or I think the northwest one might be Oronoco. And so those properties to develop have a lot more I would say restrictions, just because they have to work with both the city and the county to create a long-term plan for the eventual connection to city services and sewer and water. So that can sometimes be a turnoff to developers wanting to develop there. Other than that, resource protection areas, so those are probably areas that aren't well suited for suburban development, and they score probably high for keeping the natural area as it is.
So to speak to that, our understanding is there have been proposals for the properties and there's been grading and development, and then they were turned down like right around Sargent's. Like if you've driven out there, you can see new roads put in that were on semi-approval or something. Additionally, there's a large plat that was just sold on the north side of 75th Street in the last month or so, with signs for development possibilities as well. Again, another red flag for all of us, more traffic on 75th Street. Maybe there's no proposed plan, but there wasn't a proposed plan for this 12 and the Boulder property 6 months or a year ago. And again, when it was advertised, and Mrs. Loss does have a picture, it was advertised as dividable by 2 parcels. We were told at that time when they were rezoning all of us that we would have plenty of time to be given notice on anything. I even have a recording from one of the county, someone that works at the county on my phone from April when this went first on the market and said, you'll have plenty of notice. Many of us have had 5 days notice to be at this meeting. Some people are on vacation. Some of our neighbors hadn't even opened our mail. I believe Matt was the first one in our neighborhood and he got it exactly 7 days. We got it 2 days after him and we lived right next to the property.
The only reason I drove down from the cabin was because you called me.
Right.
I had no notice.
So as far as notice in general for the area, many people we've been sending out, as far as talking about traffic and sharing their experiences, we've been trying to use social media and emails to the best of our ability for people to speak up and share their experiences. But the reality is it's summer. A lot of people aren't even home to get their mail. So as far as notice in general, for anything on 18th Avenue, I don't think that we've given the general public that use those roads adequate time to give input. Oh, and 100th Street has a development going in too. So.
Thank you.
Hi, Mike and Carrie Capel. We have the.
Excuse me, could you please state your name and address?
It just said Mike and Carrie Capel.
Okay, sorry, missed that.
We have the property to the north of the discussed property. 1686 Satry Road, Northwest Oronoco.
I did send a letter to the web address. And my first comment was that we just got this notification of this meeting tonight on Friday of a 3-day weekend. And so now here we have this tonight. We feel that we may be a party that is most affected by this besides Janelle and Ferletti's, because we own the property immediately north of this proposed site. And we've been there for 23 years. We're greatly concerned about the volume of houses that are proposed for this property. We've operated this as a horse farm. We maintained trails throughout our property and preserved it as wildlife habitat for generations of deer, turkeys, and other wildlife. And if you smell a faint aroma of skunk, because I was walking my dog before we came tonight, and he came across 2 little precious little striped critters who went whoop as we walked by. We have over 200 acres of land that flow the watershed down through our property. If you put up the flood zone, the flood signs, see all the purple that comes through our property? It's not just from the subject property, it comes from Folletti's, it comes from across the street, it comes from the land to the north of us. There are times when, after torrential rain, we have 2 feet of water flowing through our property for days.
I was thinking that road that they put in kind of goes, I could see the water coming down because it's downhill to us, going right through the end of the road, right into our property, which could create some problems. But I want to first of all say that everything said about the traffic there and the intersection on 75th Street, that's incredible, messy place. And that should have been a circle drive years ago. And I think before there's any further development, that ought to be done. There should be a circle drive there. I mean, it's a very dangerous place. Since that 75th Street became 63, there's a lot of big traffic. In addition to the dump trucks that go back and forth on that road very fast, there's semis coming through there. There's a lot of traffic. And to get out there, so to add more people on that road is going to make it more dangerous.
I'm passed by people passing traffic, trying to turn north on 18th Avenue. I'm passed by people on the right every time I'm there. Somebody's passing me on the right, regardless of who else is in the intersection.
I want to back up the point when I called the realtor when this property first went up for sale, and they were pretty clear they had a much higher price on it, and they only had two, it was only for 2 buildable properties. And I assume that they recognized that and got it for a much lower price because there were only 2 lots at that time that were buildable. So I don't know, 12 seems like an awful lot for that property, for that area.
In addition, our family hunts this property. It's, like I said, we preserved it. We maintain it. We right now have 4 families of does and fawns, 4 separate does and fawns, 1 set of twins. We've seen the deer grow up through the generations, but we harvest them humanely and legally, seasonally, just during the correct seasons. And I have huge concern about the way that land is laid out for development. And those people who are going to be right next to our property, we have beautiful tree line that the deer cross over back and forth all day long, every day. We walk back there and we meet them on the trails. They're in those woods and through those woods because they know that land for the last 40 years has been tillable. It's fed them for the last 40 years. And so now what's going to happen to the people in that land that move onto that land and the deer in that land? What kind of interaction are they going to have? And what effect are they going to have on our ability to use our land the way we legally have the right to use it?
When we first moved out there, I called the county to see about development options, what's going on. And I was told that there is so much land already approved through planning all around Rochester that it wouldn't be opened up for some time. So I was kind of surprised that this even sold for development. But
I'm also concerned about the water table with because there's no city services out there. Everything's well and septic. What will that ultimately do to our water table, which has already been potentially compromised long-term? So far, it's been okay, but by the landfill that's out there, we still don't know the ultimate conclusion of that. And I'm just,
we can leave it, we wrote down some things.
You
guys want to leave?
I'm just really concerned about the watershed. As one of the primary concerns is the watershed. I don't want our land to become
A septic tank?
I don't want it to be the landing ground for storm sewers. I don't want storm sewers from these streets going through our property. I think I have a right to be concerned about that. I grew up in Country Club Manor. I visited the gravel pits that were there, and they were crystal clear turquoise waters. After the city of Rochester turned them into a storm sewer for Country Club Manor, they're the most disgusting places. I would never swim in that water. It is one of the saddest experiences of my life, is to see what's happened to those lakes down there. I don't want that, any effect like that to happen to our property or to go through our land to get to Lake Zumbro. And it goes right from our property, right down through the watershed, right to Lake Zumbro. I'm very concerned about that. And that little holding pond that he has proposed won't hold any of that. There's not a chance he's going to hold the runoff from that 35 acres.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Oh, I had a question. What were the prices gonna run for those houses going forward? Any idea
Yeah, question
for
for.
the lots? What kind of price range are the houses gonna be in that?
Do you want to make an offer?
Do you have any comments? Do you have any comments?
We have covenants in all our ones and our review as well. That's really
Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
Oh, if I could just make one more comment. We never received any packet except this letter on Friday.
I was the one that disseminated to our neighbors yesterday.
My name is Matt. This is my wife, Yasmina. My last name is Polis. We live on across the street from this property at 8930 18th Avenue Northwest.
Across the street, which way?
So we are to the south of this property.
Here somewhere.
Southeast corner.
Okay, and Crescent Ridge.
Yep, we're a 5-acre parcel. And kind of what was said earlier, talking about the 5 acres, is this particular field is surrounded by large acreages where, I mean, it's not already divided up into 2-acre lots all the way around it. So I understand when he says that to the north and the south it is, but adjacent to this field is not 2-acre properties, nor do any of the current landowners want it to be 2-acre properties. So I don't know, you said you've been out there. I don't know if any of you else have been out there in person to know what this looks like, but, and somebody said that we moved out there because we like, I think you said you probably moved out there because you like the setting, the area of the road. We did. Eventually it won't be that. So people that live out there aren't going to have what they moved out there for. But that is not my concern. My bigger concern is the traffic, which is everyone said, and we don't need to beat a dead horse on this traffic. Other than the fact that your study says to leave this property, take 85th Street to 11th Avenue, take a gravel road down to alleviate a bad intersection. Your backup plan was not even approved for Bolter to use because that gravel road is not safe. So you're saying our backup plan is to use an unsafe road that was already denied a few months ago in the Bolter to use as a road to consider. So you do have some misinformation. You guys kind of bend the rules to whatever it seems to help at the time. That's a little bit misleading to people that live out there. Like, again, we didn't to say that this is the way we should go, but we're also told that it's not a safe way to go. With this, is 90th Street going to remain gravel? It's a steep slope from 18th onto 90th with poor sight lines right there already. I did read, I guess, a packet that it said that would be graded to be not as steep. And I think that they were going to give away some of their property for turn lanes. Are these going to be gravel turn lanes? Is the whole thing being blacktopped? Who's paying for the blacktopping? And also a question would be, when they just started that development south of 75th Street, where there's also a handful of new houses that came up very fast. Even before the streets were completed, they were in their buildings. So I understand you guys keep saying this one will be years because the roads aren't in. They were building houses before that road was in. But they added turn lanes for both directions on 18th Avenue. Are they going to have to add turn lanes on here on 18th and 90th? If you're coming from this, if you're heading south on 18th Avenue and going to turn left, which would be east onto 90th, there's no bypass or turn lane for the traffic waiting there. And your guys' own study says that 30% of the traffic will be going north because only 70% will be going south. So if 30% is going north, how is that safe for anyone waiting to turn onto 90th or out of 90th onto 18th Avenue as well? There's a lot more that should be looked at than what you guys are just saying. And what you guys are saying, what your studies say. But do you know what they're?
So I can clarify a few points. Well, first I want to state that this is for the land use plan amendment and general development plan. The point of a general development plan is to be general. A lot of the concerns that you have, which I think are valid, will be addressed during the planning process, which comes later on. As to 90th Street, Public Works is in conversations with the developer on whether or not that will be paved or not. If it's paved, then yes, there will be turn lanes. Who will be assessed for that? There's nothing in our ordinance that says that the developer is required to be. Again, that's between the developer and Public Works. Most often in practice, it is the developer that will pave it, at least a portion of it. Otherwise, it will be assessed normally. Your concern with 11th Avenue and Bolter, I just feel I should clarify that Bolter one, that's about to be a 5-phase approximately development, the first phase starting on the west side. There has been no approval or denial of an access to 11th Street or Avenue, whatever it is a township road. And so the township has authority on whether or not that development would gain access. And the county has no say in that.
Is it true the township already denied that access?
So, no, because I mean, they've talked about potential denial because of the sites and because it's a gravel.
I just like how you guys don't like to bring up all of that. So thank you for bringing that
No,
up.
it's fair. And it's a lot of it has to do just because it's not adjacent to the site. But again, it is another valid point. And that was a topic of contention that came up with the Bolter property. And I feel like if there's anything else that I missed, please.
So with lowering the grade of 90th and adding turn lanes, there's an existing pond right on the south side of that property that holds water. I would imagine your turn lanes that you're going to put in are going to go right through that. Where's that water supposed to be displaced to as well?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have the answer for that. That'd be a better question for Public Works. I'd be more than happy to get you connected with them. Other than that, yeah, I have not much to say about that. So I apologize on that end.
Yeah, the farmer that was farming this land would get stuck right about where that eye is on that map of
Right.
site. He was stuck in that spot every year.
For half the summer, because there's this fresh spring, it is always wet, right? There's a lot of water flowing through there. And that tractor would sit there till August, just in time to harvest before he'd pull out the stuck one or whatever it was there. So there is more water that flows through there also. And your guys' thing, I mean, if it's blacktop, that water's gonna flow a lot faster right through your yard
Yeah, can you-
versus
I
staying up, so.
just don't want to interrupt.
Yeah.
But you're really talking to us.
Sorry.
And when you turn around that way, then I
No,
I don't hear it so well, so sorry.
I think those are my only concerns right now, currently, I guess. So.
I appreciate that. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
And if I might add really quick too, I forgot your name. Yeah, it's the Capels. Questions. I had read your comments, and I just wanted to address a few things. So one, you had asked about horses because you have a horse farm, correct? And that's fine. You will still be able to use the property as you're using it today. Minnesota has a farm, right to farm bill. You're an egg property. It's allowed in our zoning ordinance. So whether or not those people in that development complain, you're allowed to do what you want to do.
Excuse me, the horse farm part of that is not my concern. My concern is that we hunt that land.
To that I can't answer.
And those houses are going to be really, really close to our hunting land. And
But there might be state law on that. There might be county ordinance.
well, we know what the distances need to be. But people that may be moving to the country may not be expecting to hear gunfire at 7 o'clock in the morning on November 4th. And the point is, we shouldn't have to modify our lifestyle because of new people coming into a development and they have absolutely no idea what their surroundings are.
Again, let's see about the contain. But I would also add that future, whatever if this is approved, is approved or denied, there are mechanisms such as the planning commission could require the developer to do on the north side of their property as well as the east side. Again, it's all during the planning process and at the morning of the planning.
The density, I think, is becoming the bigger issue.
I guess I would ask that you guys don't make any of your decisions until there's more information. I know you're changing the guidelines this fall, or not even this fall, it was August, I believe you said, to wait and see if it still fits in with the new agenda and the new guidelines that are coming into play, as well as this roundabout. Once you guys approve this and it keeps going, the roundabout can get pushed off. We know that that can get pushed back, and there is no funding, and there hasn't been funding. And yes, there's a date that's not in stone by any means. And then it's too late. Now the houses are going in, the roundabout didn't go in. Oops, that money's gone. Now we're going to do it in 2030. Now we're going to do it in 2035. So I think the thing is we really need to not keep approving all of these until something has an actual date. I mean, at some point it's going to be developed. It's not going to stay a farm forever. It's too small to farm. No farmer's going to farm 30 acres or 23 acres forever. That's not a thing, but it's the timing is, just keep pushing them through, so many of these through. But saying this roundabout will be coming through, well, when? I mean, I get it. We have a projected date, but you all have been around long enough to know that that date means nothing at this point in time. So, I mean, or leave it as is with the two building sites and knock yourself out. The 2 houses, doesn't add any traffic, everybody's happy. That would probably be an alternative option.
Okay, well, thank you. Any comments on that?
Yeah. I don't think that anybody on the board is insensitive to your concerns. When Crescent Ridge and Ridgecrest was proposed, what do you suppose the people that were south of that said about, well, just wait for the question. What do you suppose that they said about that when that came in to propose? Do you think that possibly they were concerned that there shouldn't be houses there because they were there first and the traffic is going to get worse?
I can speak to that because the first part, we have 5 acres, which was the original 30.
Mm-hmm.
Those people sold and left. They didn't care what was happening. They sold and left. New people were coming in. They didn't live there after that point. The rest of it, Koenig still lived there and still enjoy it and didn't have a concern because they sold it and still live there. And that is the most of what Ridgecrest and what is surround us is. So I think they didn't care because they were the ones that sold it. They left, the other ones sold it and still live there happily. So your point isn't very valid in this case. I get what you're saying, but in this situation.
Yeah, I think the point, is
The point is
that you understand.
I understand that
That's
they probably could have.
right.
However, in this situation, the existing landowners
Mhm.
did not
Mhm.
have an issue with it,
No,
and everyone else moved out there to enjoy it how it is now. So
Can I say something to that?
yeah, sure.
Can you come?
you need to come up and
Introduce yourself.
state your name, sign the paper. Here's your-
I'm Sharon Wass, and I live on the west side of 18th Avenue on 100 acres, 8931 18th Avenue. And I'll sign this in just a moment. So to address those coming in, Ridgecrest and Crescent, we know the Koenigs and Kathy Miller, when that was developed, because we've been on our property long enough to remember when that was developed. They collectively decided to agree to keep 5 acres for themselves and sell off 5-ish acre parcels around them. And it was a collective agreement among those residents who owned the larger properties. And they were all in agreement. on that, when that got developed. So that's how that came into existence. Thank you.
What would be the size of lots up around the White Birch Court Northwest and other stuff?
Up against the subdivision to the south.
Other subdivision?
The other one, I think it's correct, you're 5 acre-ish, acres
I
ish.
used to live on White Birch Court, 499 White Birch Court.
Yep.
And there we owned 10 acres that went right down to the river as well. So most of those, there are many that are 10 acres, 8 acres, larger lots.
And the same thing as the Crescent Ridge Road Northwest also, no? 5 acre lots?
Crescent Ridge, many of those are 5 acres or larger, especially at the end, closer to the 90th Street.
2+ acres.
Do you have anything else, Dan?
I do. I haven't gotten my turn yet. Yes, thank you. So you had mentioned the accidents that were under $1,000 that apparently aren't significant, but from my experience, that's not the case. I didn't have an accident at this intersection. A concussion. You've heard of concussions. They're called traumatic brain injuries. They're disabilities. Car accident, bumper to bumper at a stoplight. A car hit me from the back. We were at a complete stop. None of the bumpers cracked. None of the bumpers cracked. And, well, here we are. Less than $1,000 with a disability. That's my concern. This intersection has inconvenienced many of us. We're afraid to use it. A lot of us try and do the best to go to the intersection just west of there. But again, we're human. We want to do what's quick, and quick is 18th and 90th. We have children. Have they been considered? They will be driving. I have an 18-year-old young driver. I have a 14-year-old that's about to start driving school. I have another one on the way. We're talking 2-3 years here, and a lot of these neighbors will have young children driving, and this intersection will not be appropriate for even the people that live there at the moment. It is a concern bringing in more traffic to the area, a huge concern. I don't want to see anybody's child lost at this intersection, anybody's parent. We had a birthday party for my son. They were all dropped off at her home. Parents were coming to pick them up. The mom ended up being in an accident. Luckily, it wasn't serious, but it could have been an awful experience for everyone at this party. So, $1,000 or less car accidents should be considered as part of this planning because they matter. They're life-changing. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Is there anybody online, Beth, that would like to wait in to speak? Oh, excuse me.
I have a Mary Bremer. that's online. Did you want to speak, Mary? If so, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, this is Mary Bramer, and I have nothing more to add. I think my neighbors have expressed it most convincingly. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Adam Lang. I live on 9051 18th Avenue, so it's a 10-acre parcel that's directly across from 18th from this. I don't have a ton to add because, like she had just said, a lot of the valid points were made up. But just to give my perspective from living directly across there, kind of linking the land use with the actual traffic issues, January, February, March, that whole field is full of at least 150 deer every night. And so it's just a matter of if, there are a bunch of houses there, what are the deer going to do? Are they going to be there? There's going to be a lot of crossing the intersections, crossing the streets. So just make sure that is considered too, as far as the land use. Also, and as they mentioned before, we stand across the street and watch that whole section is just full of water, a decent amount of the year, especially down towards the bottom. I think there's I don't know if it's a what you would consider a marsh or a little pond there. I'm not sure if that would have to be filled in order for it to be developed. But there's definitely a lot of water issues there. And just with the increased traffic on 18th as well, I know that's a slightly different issue, but as far as planning for all of this, we've lived there for 6 years. I don't think I've seen any speed enforcement, officers out there. People drive, 80 miles an hour because they know that people aren't going to be there to catch them. I don't know where they're going, but that it's constant, back and forth up and down the street. And in addition to the gravel trucks and all of that, and then mixing in the school buses with that. So it's a pretty sketchy situation currently. Adding in, 12 more houses with, twice that many cars, it just wanting to assure that there's planning that goes into that as far as approval and just when that is. Because as we've heard, it's something's going to happen there for sure, whether it's now or later, but just as long as there's planning involved to make it safe for all of us. We have a 5-year-old son, we don't want, anything to happen based on increased traffic there. Janelle will probably know, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, there was a truck and a trailer that was going down there and just kind of drove off the road into the farm field at like 2 a.m. So, I mean, if there were houses there, they have the potential of crashing into houses going down there. So I don't know if that means, speed limit changing or what, but just as long as those things are factored in. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to point out, I'm not sure.
Can you come up?
You get your exercise tonight.
That's okay. I sat for 12 hours today. So very quickly, I'm not sure
This is Beth. Who's speaking? Can they state their name, please?
Oh, my name is Janelle Rosine, and I live on 90th Street, but in reference to 75th and 18th Avenue, there are 0 turn lanes north and south. None. There are designated turn lanes to go south from 63 technically, south on 18th, and there's a right turn lane to turn north on 18th. But on 18th Avenue going south or northbound and wanting to turn east or westbound, there are no turn lanes. So if you're waiting like I am in the morning to go to work like many other people, you're waiting for all those trucks and cars and stuff to make their left turn, traffic backs up. I guess it's just surprising there's no turn lanes for this amount of traffic. And with that, with the turn lanes that go east and west, and I think I heard one of you speaking before the meeting, people go around the vehicles waiting to turn left southbound or left northbound. And that's where our accidents happen. So again, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that with all this traffic, there are no designated turn lanes in half of that intersection.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Elliot. Were the water concerns considered when your department looked at the land use plan? And I assume because you came back, your department came back with a recommendation to approve, that you must have looked at the water issues.
Yes, and we received no, I actually reached out to Soil and Water Conservation District today. They briefly responded just by saying that DNR is the one that looks at the water table. And we had not received any comment related to the water issues. The only other water issue being floodplain. And again, because this is just a general development plan, it's general in nature. And so the more detailed grading and erosion control plans will be, if this is approved, would be part of the platting process.
And that's the township,
Correct.
correct?
Yep, and the county.
Still have to go back to the township. The township has to look at the size of the lots, the grading. Mhm.
So this is Beth. Charlie has his hand up and he'd like to speak.
Thanks, Beth. I just had one comment I wanted to make. There's been a lot of comments made about funding for improvements at the intersection of 18th and 63. Hopefully folks can see this. People in the chambers there can see it, but just confirm that the funding for construction of the roundabout has been approved. So this memo is, for those of you who can see this, is dated February 3rd of this year. That's when MnDOT got notice that they were selected to receive funding for this intersection. And the amount of funding that was awarded is a little over $2.8 million. And it is in the program. When you see program year here, listed here, that's the year that the money is included in the federal budget. And that's when the federal government will reimburse MnDOT for the construction work. MnDOT or potentially the county could choose to advance construct improvements at that intersection before 2026, with the knowledge that this award has been granted. So they would not be reimbursed until that time. So I just wanted to make that clear, that there are dollars that are specifically awarded to this project and will be available.
Thank you, Charlie.
Chair, I have a quick question to Charlie. Charlie, this is Ravi Nadimpalli.
Yes.
I do see some traffic study and other stuff and the funds allocated, and there is a score of 57 out of 100. What was the score? Can you explain a little bit on that?
So every project that is submitted for consideration to get this funding has to go through an analysis. I cannot specifically tell you the different factors right now that are, but they look at, there's a set of 8 to 10 factors that are analyzed by the people that review all the applications, and with each factor having, being basically 10 or 15 points that each factor accounts for. So every project that is submitted in a given year goes through the scoring process. And basically the projects that score the highest are the ones that are selected for funding. So I believe this project, or the improvement at this intersection, actually had gone through the process a couple of times. And the first year or two, it was not selected. And I think the question about the study was actually the work that, the study that was done was actually work that MnDOT did in order to provide the information with the application for the funding. So I think that's the only study work in the last 3 to 4 years that I'm aware of out here.
Thank you.
Can you identify yourself again?
Janelle Rosine, 1475 90th Street Northwest. In the packet that we received yesterday, page 2, it specifically addresses under the environmental review that future plans for a roundabout to be constructed at this intersection, there are future plans, but the timeline for this project falls anywhere between 24 and 27. So again, we're back to, even if these homes are going in the next 2 years, the possibility is still 2 to 3 years out for any traffic control at that intersection. Additionally, with that same packet, and this was discussion items maybe from the previous, that Mr. Ryder noted there's no study currently planned for the 75th corridor at this point. MnDOT has not indicated any intention of doing one. He noted corridor study would be needed before any OSM would occur, whatever. Again, we're back to its city and count or state and county. So even if the state says we have the money, we know what's happened on Highway 14. So I feel like it's just a.
Well, if I can comment, this is a little different than Highway 14. So in the case of Highway 14, the county was lobbying the state and talking to our local legislators about getting money included in a bonding bill or in a bill that was looking at how to distribute some of the extra funding that the state has available now, thanks to all the different federal programs and some increase in tax receipts. And the problem, the money had been put in the proposed bill for that interchange on Highway 14, but the legislature and the governor couldn't agree on the bill, so nothing happened. So the money is not there yet. This is a federal program for this roundabout, this intersection. The money is allocated at the federal level through a program, and that money is in hand at the at the federal level. It has been appropriated, and at the federal level, they've decided how much is going to each state. So Minnesota knows how much money they're going to receive from that program, and then the state manages the process to select the projects. So this money has been allocated to this project. And as I said, it's in federal year 2026, which I don't want to get into it's a lot of arcane details, but the federal fiscal year in terms of when that money is technically available is actually October 1st of 2025. And then MnDOT fiscal year starts on July 1st. So they're willing to award a project as early as July of 2025, apparently. Even though they haven't actually received that money yet, they won't receive that money until a couple months later. So the probability of this project getting done is pretty high, and it could start in 2025 unless, as I said, doesn't appear MnDOT would want to advance constructed, whether the county would consider advancing construction and then getting reimbursed at some period of time later. I don't think it's something that the county board and public works department have discussed yet, but that is a potential option that could be considered.
Thank you for that information, Janelle Rosine, 90th Street again. So in April, I was told by the county, by someone speaking at the county, that no other additions would be going in along the 18th corridor until I had nothing to worry about with regard to traffic until construction of a roundabout or something similar was done. I was specifically told that. Now, am I realistic to think that that was like set in stone? No. But in all honesty, that was told to me and probably other people. And again, I can appreciate that the federal funding has come to the state level, but we're still at the crossroads of this being a county and a state project. So until we see the funds approved for the county, it again is the which comes first. So, and the last thing I just want to go back to reiterate is this property in particular, separate from the traffic, is more surrounded by larger parcels than the average development right now. I can appreciate that River Ridge went in and that changed the dynamic. We moved in about the time that that was being built. That was a large building, taking up to the river and what have you. Just because you do something once doesn't mean you should continue to do it without respect to traffic patterns, agriculture, water runoff, and everything else. That's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to apologize for someone in the county for speaking out of turn, because I don't think that anybody in the county in a position of responsibility that are sitting here in this room would ever say that nothing else is going to happen until whatever. So I can't speak for all of our staff, 1,200 employees in the county, but if that was said, it was inappropriate and just shouldn't have been done, because this is the planning. This is where it all comes through. This is where all of this stuff happens, and that there isn't any staff that can speak for the board. That's just the way it is. So I apologize for that. And God, I wish that you wouldn't have been misled. So, what else? No, I think that that's the statement that I had to say. Sorry.
And with regard to notice, I know I should go there, have a voicemail that said we would all be given plenty of notice back on April 19th. I think it's been made clear we have not been given plenty of notice. And have all done our due diligence within a few days to express our concerns for several things.
Yeah, I can ask a question about that. Is there somebody here on the staff that can say that we met the conditions of proper notice?
Yes. I mean, I could hand it over to Beth, who's the one who did it. But yeah, the notification range meets statute. And again, they were postmarked 10 days prior, which is set out in statute. What I can't speak to is the process by which mail is delivered, other than knowing that it goes up to the cities and comes back down. Does that make sense to me personally? No. But again, I can't speak to mail delivery persons.
And please approach your podium.
Hello, my name is Emily Lunn, and I am the newest member of this lovely neighborhood. I live on Miller. Oh my gosh, I forgot my address.
Yeah.
I live on 8991 Miller Place. So right where the road will connect. Yeah, I have that lot right there to the right of it. And I just wanted to say, I guess, two small things in regards to that. One, I appreciate you saying that about when it was postmarked. I will say I actually have a good relationship with our mail lady named Mary. And I noticed that I had a package out for about 4 days and it had still not been picked up. So I quite literally ran down the mail truck, take my package. And it was not Mary, it was her supervisor. And they had told me that they had a lot of shortages and that we had not had mail delivered in 4 days. And that they weren't picking up any mail and they weren't delivering mail unless you had a package or something. And so I've actually not gotten what they talked about, the packet and stuff. I still haven't even received that. So I will say that it is unfortunate timing because with the holidays and with the labor shortage, that a lot of people would probably be here with even more information to give you if it weren't for that, because I do not feel like we had any accurate advance notice at all. And the other thing, I know this is more for me, but I have 2 small kids and more on the way. And I will say we very recently bought our land back in September. And we also called the county. Our realtor, we did a lot of, we were very hesitant to buy a property on a 3-corner lot. It's not usually, location that you want, but we were given also by the county, there would not be any more driveways on that area. We were also told for sure that it was only going to be a 2, that lot that was selling, because it was for sale when we moved in, that it was only going to be 2. So I do feel like I've been duped by the county, because we were told it was going to be 2. Like I don't know, that's what it was advertised as. That's what they sold it as. It's just, I don't know. I kind of just feel duped by the county a little bit, because we just bought this like $1 million house, and now this big thing is going to next door, which I know that's kind of sucks for you, but just FYI, it's unfortunate.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak?
One more thing. I got permission. Mina Polis here again.
Can you introduce yourself again for the audience?
Yes, Mina Polis here again. So one thing that we have noticed, my husband and I, there's been an increase in accidents on 18th and 85th Street. I don't know if anyone is taking that into consideration, but I feel like the issue is just moving up a little bit further, and I don't know if that's being looked at as well. Like I said, there's been a lot of neighbors that are trying to take that 85th Street over to avoid the 18th and 75th Street intersection. But instead of the issues being down here now, they're at 85th and 18th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else wish to speak? We have to ask this 3 times. Does anybody else wish to speak?
We do have one person online, Mary Bremer.
Oh, okay, sorry. Go ahead, Mary, if you're there. Identify yourself.
I'm Mary Bramer. I live at 1477 White Birch Court, Oronoco. And I agree with everything the neighbors are saying. My sense is that this is a little bit of the cart before the horse, because I agree that we are in desperate need of a roundabout at 75th Street. I go that way every day to work, and I'm always concerned that I'm going to get hit by somebody going very quickly by. And I'm just wondering if there's any way that we can get some assurances that this roundabout could go in earlier than is currently planned, or at least get a move on that particular topic, because I think it is very urgent. I think most of us would feel a lot better if that particular problem was taken away. None of us think that this area will never be developed, but we want it to be developed safely. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you still there, Charlie? Do you have any comment on that?
Well, unfortunately, in terms of the planning department, we do not get involved in the funding discussion. So it's hard for me to really comment on it, other than to say I know that County Public Works Department and MnDOT District 6 are discussing trying to do the project a little bit earlier. But I still think that what I've heard still would probably, the earliest it would be done would still be 2025. So, it's really a question for the county board and Public Works. Probably the best time to address that would be during the next cycle of the county working on what's called the capital improvements plan. which happens usually in the latter half of the year. So it'd be like in the fall and early winter when that document is being put together. And what a capital improvements program is basically a plan for how the county will be spending dollars on various types of capital improvements. Highways are certainly part of that, and then all the other kind of capital investments that the county makes. But they work on a new funding plan every year that covers a 4-year period and updated every year. So I think, to have that issue be brought up as part of the capital improvements plan discussion this fall would probably be the best option available to try and see if it could be done a little bit earlier.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Well, once again, is anyone else approach a microphone?
I am one of the people who only received one notice and no packet. I'm Sharon Ross on 8931 18th Avenue. And the looming question I have as a realtor is when a listing is made, I understand that changes can be made afterward, but when a listing is made and listed, marketed, and described in the written description as being 2 parcels, how did it go and when and why did it move from 2 parcels to 12 parcels?
Do you have any comment on that?
I can clarify. I want to clarify on 2 things. The first being, we don't send the packet out, just an FYI for the crowd. We don't send the packet out with the notice, but it is available online. We did get a request, so we sent it to her. But other than that, typically it's on the citizen, for better or worse, to go on the internet to do it. In terms of that 2-acre listing, I'm assuming what would have happened was the real estate agent, assuming the best, called our office. And in our ordinance, because this property is zoned A3, we allow for up to 2 non-farm parcels per quarter section. And so a non-farm parcel is just any parcel that is less than 35 acres in size. And it has nothing to do with use. So they would be correct in saying that a meets and bounds split could occur on this property and 2 non-farm dwellings could have been placed on by right with the meets and bounds. Had they want to develop, they'd have to go through this process that we're going through today, which is a land use plan amendment, general development plan. And if that is approved by the county board, then they have to do a rezone to R1 or RA to then get the plat approved. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, yes, because when I spoke with the township this past winter in late 2021, inquiring about my 100 acres being parceled off for my 5 children, I was denied because they said they did not want increased parcel. They didn't want increased usage of the area. And so I would find it ironic that right across the street now we have 12 acres that may potentially be approved right across the road from me. And it seems that there might be partiality. You can imagine, I just feel slightly discriminated against in that I cannot divide my own land for my children for their use. But across the street, a 2-acre or 2 parcel property now can potentially be split into 12.
And you were speaking to the township, right?
Yes.
That's where you'll have to take your argument to the township.
Correct. And so I understand that this has to go from here to the township.
That's correct.
Correct. And I forgive my ignorance of this whole process, but when the options to approve, deny, or delay are given, I guess my preference would be deny until all other issues are remedied and solidified, And then things could proceed once we have more known entities, would be my only recommendation.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to comment or speak?
Hi, Steve Ferletti, 1094 White Birch Court, Oronoco, Minnesota. When that gentleman came up and said there was 150 deer in that field, this is a picture of that field. And all those dots are deer. There's probably at least 150 deer in that field. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else wish to comment or speak? Do we have any other people? Oh, Ben?
Could you just ask if everyone's that spoke, please make sure that they signed in. I just want to make sure that when we prepare the minutes, we have everybody's name correctly. I think everyone did, but I just like to make sure that everyone did, because I know a lot of folks have come up and sat down a couple of times.
How do we deal with the one? How do you deal with the one online? Not here to sign, but you must have a different way.
That was why Beth asked her to give her name and address.
There she is.
But the sign-in sheet is the preferred.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, just to reiterate, if anybody didn't sign that spoke, if you'd please do so before you leave. We're required to ask 3 times to make sure they have a chance to say their piece. Does anybody else wish to comment or speak? Does anybody else wish to comment or speak? This is the last time. Does anybody wish to comment or speak?
Move to close the open meeting.
Oh, that was next, Greg. I guess I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Motion made by Mr. Joseph, seconded by Mr. Nat DePauli. All in favor, we got to do this by roll call. Mr. Joseph?
Yay.
Mr. Nat DePauli? Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mr. Hillsman votes aye. The public meeting is officially closed. This time we'll open the floor for discussion amongst the commissioners and planning commission for the planners. Anybody have any comments?
You know, I've been sitting here, we're a volunteer board with the exception of Commissioner Wright, who is an actual Olmsted County Commissioner, and I'm looking at all of you and I can sense your frustration. There's a lot of moving parts within the zoning. I know spending time with the staff, they do their due diligence, and you're only as good as the information that you have. Are there some nuances that we can do better? It sounds like there are when it comes to communication. Sounds like we need to do some more due diligence in certain areas. There are statutes set up that were that are ongoing, that are constantly being updated. Are we perfect? No. The frustrating part is I see yours and I sense your frustration, but there are a lot of moving parts. I'm a commercial contractor, so I understand the nuances that are involved. And it is very frustrating, especially if you're not used to that. So from that standpoint, I have to apologize, but again, you know, our charge is, what do we do moving forward? Do we, you know, and that's, you know, we're moving this, it's a very convoluted system that we have because it goes from here to the township and so on and so forth. So it is, there are a lot of moving parts, but I think our charge tonight is whether or not we pass, approve, or approved, not approve, or ask for a continuance. And I think that's what our charge is. I understand your frustration. There is absolutely a validity to the safety issues. I have 5 grandchildren. All of my children are grown, and I understand the nuances of traffic, and that is something that was very well illustrated tonight. And I think there's more to come with that. And I think Oronoco Township has some very passionate people that are pushing with MnDOT in the county as well.
I'd just like to say that I'm not insensitive to traffic issues. We have traffic issues all over the county. We generally are 2 to 4 years out when we budget for road improvements. And we know that Century High School had an issue and that we had to work out with the city, and that they want a roundabout there, but that's not scheduled until 2024. I know that Highway 14 is different, but the state just sent us a letter to say that they're closing the median at County 44 in 7th Street. In other words, no left turns. I don't know if that would make your issue better if the state came in to say, well, we'll mitigate your traffic by not allowing a left turn. But that's the state's decision. 63 State Road wasn't our decision. But the county will live with that until something else is done. So there's no perfect solutions. That's the difficulty.
Do you have any comments? Any other comments by the commissioners? I'd entertain a motion to,
Are we doing the club first or the?
what's that?
If we both, don't we?
We have to have separate emotion, my understanding, Mr. Chair, a separate motion for each proposal.
With the land use plan amendment being first.
Okay, I make a motion for the, close the discussion for the LUPA land use permit area.
Okay. I thought we did that, but that's all right. I'll move that we close the public hearing for the LUPA then.
Well, we already closed the public hearing. This is closing our discussion.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the clarification. Sorry.
So you're making a motion. Do I have a second?
Yep.
All right.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Ray, and second by Mr. Natapoli. Take a vote by roll call. Mr. Joseph?
Nay.
No, he's asking closing the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sorry.
Mr. Natapoli? Mr. Ray?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay.
Mr. Chair, you may want to ask Mr. Canan to explain about the voting since we have a limited quorum this evening. Mr. Canan's on the line. He could explain about how about the voting we have a quorum, but we just barely have a quorum. Tom, are you there? Can you hear me? We can't hear you.
Unmute your mic.
Unmute your mic.
Sorry about that. Yes, I can hear you. So the only thing that's different is that we were previously operating under pandemic rules, and that required a roll call vote because we had commissioners that were voting online. We don't have any commissioners voting online anymore, so there's no need for a roll call vote. But other than that, it's just simply a straight, and as you commented before, we need to basically, even though we were going to have a joint discussion on the land use plan amendment as well as the general development plan, we need to have one motion to address each of those separately.
Okay.
And one other thing I just wanted to point out, again, I'm not providing any opinion on the merits here, but as you know, because one of the options is a continuance, and that's been discussed, the land use plan amendment is not subject to the 60-day rule. The general development plan is subject to the 60-day rule. And so if there's a sentiment to continue the general development plan, you have to be mindful about whether or not we're going to exceed the 60 days and whether or not we need to issue a letter basically extending the 60-day rule.
Is clear for the land use plan, there isn't a 60-day rule,
Correct.
so we could continue it indefinitely?
Well, the thing is that typically, even though they're subject to two different sets of rules, and the planning staff can certainly weigh in on this, it's customary that these two proceed, albeit separately, but they proceed at the same time.
Okay. Well, I misspoke before about closing the land use plan amendment. Do we have a motion to accept or deny or continue the land use plan?
I make a motion that we make, issue continuance.
Do I have a second for that?
Mr. Nadimpalli would second that.
Okay, we have a motion for a continuance by Mr. Joseph, second by Mr. Nandapali.
Before you vote on that particular motion, could I ask then to the commissioners that have suggested that they support that, what additional information do you believe is necessary that the staff can garner before it's basically returned back to the commission for additional consideration? I want to make sure that essentially you're not setting up the staff to fail here, in the sense that, you know, if you're going to continue it, there needs to be the ability to garner additional information to make a more informed decision that you can't make tonight.
Commissioner Joseph, I would ask the staff to do a more comprehensive, more in-depth study on the traffic patterns there, in addition to the wetlands that are in that location, as far as water saturation and drainage, what is actually happening versus what we see from a geotech side. If we could do a little bit more in depth, that would give us a little bit more information. I think it would address some of the concerns.
This is Ravi Nadimpalli. My recommendation is to find the dispatch information, or include the dispatch information in the traffic study of MNDOT and other people, to find out how many of these were reported according to the MNDOT, and were there any dispatch that have been called during that time. If that information is matching, that is good. And then I forgot the name, somebody brought in about a request to consider a less than $1,000 accidents also. If that is the case, how it would be different from if it is happening in other parts of the county? How can we take into consideration of those two? That would be my recommendation.
One other thing I just wanted the planning staff to comment on as well is, just because there may be some misconceptions about what information typically is garnered and is available at the time of a general development plan and land use plan amendment, and what information, more detailed information, is available, let's say, at the time of a preliminary plat. So perhaps before you vote on this motion, Elliot, or if anyone else in the planning staff wants to comment on that point, I think it'd be helpful for the commissioners to understand the difference there.
I'll take the first shot, but yeah, again, general development.
Elliot, I'm going to ask you to come up and speak up here. So thank you very much.
I will say that a general development plan, again, is meant to be general. When we're looking at a land use plan amendment, we're looking at that criteria that was set and approved by the county board in the general land use plan, which was on the presentation. Traffic is a component. I think I would rather throw that back to Charlie or Sandy, since they have a more intimate knowledge on that. But I would say that a lot more of the in-depth details that would come to light are more likely to come to light during the planning process, and when it's at the more local level of the township. So.
Right. Let me just rephrase that. So my understanding, this is a plan in general, not all the specific parts.
Mm-hmm.
So even if more information came back, it's still in general. And then the developer and township would have to deal with all the specifics of this, including lot size, right? Including where the road is, including where the roads exit and enter, not us.
Correct. The general development plan, again, is general. Things can be changed from the plat to the general development plan. I would say something as extreme as changing from 12 lots to 4 lots, that would be grounds probably for denial. We wouldn't, that's a pretty extreme change. But if it's something about shifting the road 2 feet to the left, or changing the entrance 2 feet to the left,
Right.
changing one lot from, or eliminating just one lot, changing a lot from 2 to 2.5 acres, stuff like that is the nitty gritty detailed stuff at the county level, or the
And then when the township gets it, it's their decision, not our decision, even though that eventually will come back. But it usually comes back with the township's approval.
correct. And I would say mainly the reason for that is because the township has a better local knowledge of the
Yeah,
area.
better local knowledge, right?
So,
Thank you.
One other thing I wanted to just comment on too, right, is that everyone in attendance may not be aware that the county planning staff is the planning staff for the township, right? So when the preliminary, if the land use plan amendment and the general development plan, let's say, would be approved tonight, the planning staff is still going to be expected to weigh in on the preliminary plat and potentially address some of these questions down the road when the township takes up the preliminary plat. Is that a fair statement?
that's fair.
So,
Is there any further discussion before we vote on this motion for continuance?
well, I'm gonna vote no on this, whether that, because of the information that we just had from, our attorney. And it's a general use plan. It still has a lot of planning yet to be done. And with the township and our own county staff, and they're gonna take all that stuff into consideration.
So you're thinking we should deny this?
Well, that would be my opinion, and it's up to Commissioner Anthony what he wants to do, but I would ask him to withdraw his motion.
In light of the information that was just shared by our county attorney and Commissioner Wright, I would rescind my motion for a continuance.
Yeah, thank you very much for that information, county attorney and planning staff. Probably, I was going through the weeds of getting into details of how many accidents and less than $1,000 accidents. By forgetting it is a general land use development plan, so I would like to rescind my decision too.
Okay, well, we're open for another motion then.
I will move to.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hillsman,
Yes.
could you ask the county attorney to explain about the voting with 4 members? Because he'll need to explain that since we only have 4 members in attendance this evening.
So are you asking, does it take 4 votes or does it take 3 votes?
That's what Mr. Canan will need
Okay.
to explain.
That way.
Right. So I'm sorry if I misunderstood, Mr. Griffith, your comment earlier. Yes. So because we have just barely enough for a quorum tonight, I believe it will take an affirmative vote of all 4 of the members in support of either a motion to approve or to deny in order for a motion to pass.
Okay. And
Okay.
I just want to say it's not barely enough. It is enough.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
4 is a majority of the 7 seats on
Yes,
the PAC.
I understand. I
It's the
just
correct-
wanted to
yes.
clarify.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do you wish to make a motion?
I will make a motion. I'm going to move to approve the county land use plan amendment 02022-003 LUPA with the recommendations and everything that's been added by the county for the land use plan.
I'll second it.
To approve it.
To approve it, yes.
We have a motion made by Mr. Wright, seconded by Mr. Joseph to approve the land use plan amendment. Approval.
Yeah, approve.
So you want to do this by roll call, Mr. Joseph?
Aye.
Mr. Nandapoli?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mr. Hillsman? Nay.
Okay.
With that being said, the motion doesn't pass.
Does not pass. That's right.
So is there any use of going on to the general development plan?
May I ask the attorney a question here?
Sure.
So if this did not pass, so is there any point in going on to the general land use plan then?
No, not really, not in my mind, because the two have to proceed together. You can't have a general development plan approved without a land use plan amendment being approved first.
All right. So the options are that it's done for right now, or could we go back and do a continuation? Or is that the continuation too late?
No, I think the options now would be either you could move to deny it, or you could move to continue it. Again, I'm just still wondering if it's relevant information for this stage in the process, where my sense is the questions that have arisen are for the most part directed toward things that are usually developed at the preliminary plating stage and not at the general development plan stage. And so I guess what I'm saying is that I'm not convinced that a continuance is necessarily warranted at this stage in the proceeding, because the data that you're seeking to get would usually be produced in connection with the preliminary plat.
Elliot, Sandy
Yeah.
has her hand up.
Yep.
Oh, go ahead, Sandy.
Hi, thank you. This is Sandy Gosley, Principal Planner with the Planning Department. I just wanted to pose to Tom the question, since ultimately what the Planning Commission is doing is making a recommendation to the county board. It strikes me in the past, there's been an option when we've been in this position of suspending the rules. So
Yes.
could you address that one for them?
Yes, thanks for the reminder, Sandy.
You bet. We've been through
while.
this too many times, Tom.
Yes. So there's
Thanks.
a provision, and I apologize because I wasn't able to access the bylaws online. I tried, but I'm working from home because I have a family medical issue going on, and I'm trying to manage that as well. But if I'm not mistaken, if a majority of the members present of the Planning Commission move to suspend the rules, then another option here would be to basically indicate that there weren't sufficient votes either to approve or to deny, and then the matter simply moves on to the county board without a recommendation. That way it's kind of not stuck in the potential limbo that we just discussed here a moment ago. The county board will still get the kind of the minutes of the meeting, so they'll know the issues that were raised and the concerns that were raised by the people that spoke this evening. The only thing will be that the PAC essentially will not give its recommendation to the county board. They'll just say, here's the record, county board, make up your own minds, basically based on the record that was developed in front of the Planning Advisory Commission.
So it goes ahead without our approval or disapproval.
Correct.
So what motion do we have to entertain to do that?
Well, you need a motion to suspend the normal rules that apply to this land use plan amendment and general development plan.
Okay.
Well, I would entertain a motion to
Suspend.
the normal.
I will move to suspend the rules.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we had a motion made by Mr. Wright to suspend and seconded by Mr. Joseph. I will do a vote by roll call. Mr. Joseph,
Aye.
Mr. Wright,
Aye.
Mr. Nandapali,
Right.
chair votes aye, so
All right.
it's on,
And then
it's
when-
on to the county commissioners where we'd have to go anyway.
Right.
Even if we approved it.
Yeah. When, how many weeks would that be? It doesn't go to the next county board one, does it?
It does. It goes to the July 19th county board meeting.
Okay,
And the notifications, Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, have already been sent out or to be sent out on Tuesday?
Nope, they
So-
went out to Central Services today, so they were postmarked and sent today.
so is that the 21st county board?
Yes, I
meeting?
believe so. Yes.
Okay, well,
The 19th,
Yeah, 19th.
July
Yeah, I was gonna
19th.
say, I think it's the 19th.
July 19th.
That's the next county board meeting and that's at 3:00.
Yep, thank you. I was trying to figure it out.
The 21st is the next planning commission meeting.
Oh, yes.
The 19th is the next county board
you.
meeting.
Right, okay. So for the people that are here today, you have the date and the time then, the county board.
more time to prepare. Okay, well, we're finished with that item on the agenda. Is there any other business before?
Oh, Tom, do they have to do this for both the GDP and LUPA? Suspend the rules?
Yeah, I guess because we did ask that they be considered separately, probably to dot the i's and cross the t's, we should probably have a separate motion. If the first one was for the land
Lupa.
use plan amendment, then make the second motion pertaining to the general development plan.
So
Okay,
make that motion, Mr. Chair.
same motion to suspend.
Suspend the rules for the general development plan.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second it.
Joseph, okay. Any other discussion? None being heard, we'll do a vote by roll call to suspend the land general development plan. Mr. Joseph,
Aye.
Mr. Ray,
Aye.
Mr. Nandapali,
Right.
chair votes aye. Okay, motion is approved to suspend the general development plan.
Well, it's actually to suspend the normal rules that apply, that require an affirmative vote of 4 or more to move it on without a recommendation, just to be clear.
That's what I meant when I made the motion. Thank you, Tom.
That's what I meant when it said it was approved. Thank you, Tom.
I made attorneys.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there any other business before the planning?
One thing.
Ben?
Well, I don't know if any of the members have anything. I have one item to pass along.
We'd entertain that.
Y'all go first if there's anything that y'all have. I don't want to step out of order. I just wanted to let y'all know that Mr. Canan touched on it a little bit earlier. We seem to be out of the pandemic mode for our public meetings. So our meetings will need to be attended in person by the board and committee members. We still will have teams available for the public to participate like we did this evening. We had the lady that attended and made some comments. That option will still be available for the public, but for the planning commission members, they will be required to attend in person. So that's going forward. So we've been kind of doing a hybrid where we have, we were doing 2 years ago, we were all virtual, and then we were moving to a hybrid model where some were, and we spread out to keep social distancing standards. And going forward now, we will be meeting in person. So I just want to pass that along to the commissioners and make sure, and I'll make that announcement again at the next meeting and make sure planning commission members are aware of that going forward. And that's in accordance with the county board's directive for their meetings, as well as the county boards, the other boards and commissions throughout the county. Did I cover everything, Mr. Canan? Did I leave anything out? I think that was
Yes.
the main thing was that the requirement is to attend in person going forward.
Right. Barring, God forbid, a resurgence of the pandemic and back to where we were a couple of years ago. Yeah.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Do fellow commissioners have anything else they'd like to bring up?
No, sir.
Okay, well, I'd entertain one more motion.
I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.